One thing I try to do with this channel is stay connected and talk with you guys on a regular basis. Because I'm not the largest League of Legends YouTuber out there, I can often read through and respond to every single message you guys send me over Facebook or Twitter. Well, a large number of people often ask me something along the lines of, how do I recognize my mistakes? Or they have a comment like, I know I don't play perfect, but it really seems like everyone else makes more mistakes than me. Those who ask questions like this or have comments like this seem to understand that they aren't the best player in the world and they can only get better if they start learning from their mistakes, but they seem to have a little trouble in actually identifying those mistakes. I don't blame them. League of Legends is a highly complex game, and separating your mistakes from volatile factors of solo queue can be pretty difficult. Now, I can give you some specifics. A good starting point, for instance, is looking at each time you died and seeing what mistake you made during each death. But there's actually a philosophical school of thought that can help us with all this. What I'm referring to is known as Solipsism. Solipsism is the philosophical idea that only one's own mind is sure to exist. You can only be 100% certain of your own mind's existence, and all other outside things, whether they be food or objects or people, can only exist because your mind perceives them. For instance, if you never saw this video in your subscription box, or in the recommended videos box, or on Reddit, or however you managed to find it, how can you be sure it existed at all? There are plenty of videos out there on YouTube that you've never seen. But if I tell you to picture one of these videos in your mind, you obviously can't do it. The reason being, your mind hasn't experienced it yet. It can't be sure these supposed videos even exist. I can tell you that they're out there, or describe them in great detail to you, but you can't be sure that they're actually there until you experience them for yourself. Now, someone who actually believes 100% in solipsism can think some crazy things, like everyone is just a spawn of their imagination, and solipsists are often mocked and ridiculed for their odd, almost extreme way of thinking. But try to just entertain the idea, and keep in mind that solipsism isn't the idea that everything in the world is spawned from your own imagination. Solipsism simply means you can only be sure of the existence of your own mind. Now, believe it or not, this ties into our conversation about League. Think of it this way. In a game of League, you can only be sure of the existence of your own mind. You have no ability to prove the existence of your teammates' minds. It often seems like they don't have any anyway. So when you think about it, you should disregard everything in the game other than you. Now let me remind you, we're talking about solo queue and your mind, nothing else. You definitely should be aware of your opponent's champions and how they're playing and how they're building and all these other factors. What I'm saying is you should disregard the other players themselves. Act as if they are just spawns of your own imagination. The only reason they're in that game with you is because you're there to experience them. Maybe if you weren't in that game, they wouldn't have played so badly. Maybe if you weren't in that game, the game wouldn't have unfolded the way it did. Think of it this way. The only reason anything happens in a game of League of Legends is because you're there to allow it to happen. Of course, a true solipsist would say, I can't be sure the game even happened if I wasn't there. But try to think of it a little more loosely. For instance, if you weren't first pick and some other player was substituted in your place, maybe the picks and bans would have been different. Different players would have gotten different champions, and their levels of comfort for the champion they got may have not been the same as when you were there. Maybe you saying mid or AFK caused someone to pick a role they weren't comfortable with and a champion to match. This could have a huge effect on the game, and we're not even talking about things happening in-game yet. What if you helped your jungle when he got invaded instead of just sitting there farming mid? He wouldn't have died, gone behind, and the other jungler wouldn't have been able to snowball the game out of control. What if you roamed and ganked bot more often? The other AD carry wouldn't have had such an easy time dominating your bottom lane, and he wouldn't have snowballed the game out of control. You can list an endless number of what-ifs with regard to you and how the game unfolded. The underlying point of it all being, the only reason something happens in-game is because you're there to allow it to happen. If another player was substituted into your place, you can't know that the game would have turned out the same way. If you start thinking more and more about how you actually affected the game compared to how you could have, and you disregard everyone else in the game just enough to prevent yourself from blaming them, then you'll be able to see your good and bad plays much more often, and you'll become a much better player very quickly. If you find yourself blaming your team over and over, or you're trying to look for flaws in your own gameplay, then this is a great place to start. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. If you liked it, I suggest you subscribe for more, and as always, good luck in solo queue, happy holidays, and have a wonderful day.